Welcome, everybody, to our industry update this month. I'm Jill Cox with Chicago Title. And as I mentioned in my email and my videos about today's session, I am especially excited about today's session because I get to introduce all of you to Dr. Devang Patel. He is actually my personal doctor. And if you look up Dr. Patel online, he has hundreds of reviews of people saying this is the greatest doctor I've had in my entire life. And after working with him for a couple of years now, I would agree with that. He is so special, and I can't wait for you all to get to know him. And the reason I wanted to bring Dr. Patel to all of you is, I've worked with real estate brokers now for 20 years. You guys have one of the most challenging careers out there. It's super high stress, very demanding of your time, a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of late nights. There are deadlines you are in charge of. There are deals that fall apart the day before closing, and you think you're getting a paycheck, and then you're not getting a paycheck. You're dealing with high stress and tensions between buyers and sellers, and there's just a lot that you guys have going on. And I have seen kind of a generalized sense just in real estate and in my world. It's hard right now. The market's hard. And waking up every day, feeling motivated, feeling excited to get out and do what we have to do can be challenging. So I wanted Dr. Patel to have some conversations with you all about we're going to cover a variety of topics, but one of the ones I want to kind of kick off is to talk about brain chemistry and motivation. And I know one of his passions is all about just living your best life, feeling your best, showing up for your family. Life shouldn't just be stressful and miserable. It should be fulfilling and meaningful. And I hope that today will inspire you and bring you some information that will hopefully help you maybe get to that next level. So, with that, Dr. Patel, if there's anything you would like to do to kind of introduce yourself,
Sure.
feel free. Or if you want to jump right in to motivation and brain chemistry, we can do that.
Go from there.
Thanks
Hi,
again.
everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Devang Patel. I'm from Peak Concierge Care. My specialty is in internal medicine. But then over the past few years, I've been working with high performance individuals focused on longevity and performance medicine. So my job is to try to help people with demanding high perform pressure careers feel and perform at their absolute best. So some of the tools that we're going to talk about today, you could implement in your daily life and try to see like almost an immediate change. So one thing, Jill, you talked about, which I want to like just dive right into, is motivation. So how do we get motivation? How is it that some days we just go to bed and we get great sleep, and the next day we want to like conquer the world, and other days we just wake up and feel beat down by the world? Well, motivation happens in the brain from this chemical called dopamine. It wasn't just it's not just a chemical that's for pleasure, as we pop culture media likes to say, oh, yeah, it's all about the dopamine. Dopamine is actually a neurotransmitter that helps with pursuit of an objective that you want to complete. And when you pursue, the process of the pursuit and completion of the objective and the reinforcement of completion is where you feel the happiness and the euphoria. So this also makes your motivation high when you could learn about, oh, okay, this is a deal that needs to close. Okay, this is the steps I took to close it. I closed the deal. And then you're like, wow, I'm ready for my next 10 deals. I'm ready to go. And how does that differ from some days where you're like, it's just not happening? So we all think that burnout becomes a time management or scheduling problem, where burnout is actually a physiologic problem. What do I mean by that? Well, we all used to work super hard even before COVID. But what happened after COVID? And even with the advent of technology constantly engaging us. So we haven't been in this situation in human history in the last 20 years. Just having push notifications all day long does not allow you to turn off your brain. So at daytime, when you go to work, you're trying to be in a high output, high stress state all day long. And then you come home and you're still stuck in that high output state because you're like, well, okay, here's a message. Here's this going on. And sometimes we even distract ourselves by being on social media for a little bit, thinking that it's reducing stress, where it's just stimulating your brain even more. And we live in this like chronic state of high output, which does increase cortisol. And cortisol, I want you to think about, is opposite of dopamine. So when you're stuck in this high cortisol cycle all the time, then dopamine actually goes down. And that's why when you're stuck in high cortisol, you just don't have any motivation. So this would feel like middle of the day sluggishness. You don't want to do anything in the afternoon. You feel like you're trapped in the same life, in the same job, and nothing is changing. But it truly is because of this like stuck in this high output cortisol state. Cortisol is supposed to raise when you wake up in the morning. And then around noon, 10 to noon, it's supposed to start coming down and then get you ready for bed in the evening time. When you keep the cycle in this day and night fashion, your dopamine cycle resets as well. So just to kind of go back to this cortisol. Now, cortisol is a byproduct of our bodies being in high output state. So our body has two ways of being. One is fighting a lion or sympathetic mode. And then the other one is rest and digest or just recovery and calm. Most of us now continue to just keep fighting a lion all day long. And we don't take the time to like just reset. Or we've even forgot how to reset. So here's some few things that I kind of want to see if I could get you guys to try. So the first few things I would say are these micro recovery techniques. The first one is obvious, but we honestly, most of us don't do it, especially in the winter months, is just waking up 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning. Because of the time now, it might not be sunny before you go to work. Even a 10,000 lux lamp, 10 minutes of exposure to that can also reset the cortisol cycle. Now, again, in the morning, you're trying to get the bump up of cortisol because it also helps you get stuff done. If you're stuck in this like low cortisol loop, which does happen in a lot of people around menopause, you're just kind of like in a brain fog, not getting anywhere, procrastinating. So that sunlight exposure in the morning, very important. And it's very low cost. You just go outside. I mean, it could also be coupled with a walk that could help, but that's one. Another one is a 90-second physiological sigh. So they did research on this, meaning that if you're between, say you did 2 hours of work, heavy work, had an hour-long meeting, 1 hour-long follow-up, and then you're just sitting there and you got another meeting you're jumping into for about 90 seconds. And the research was about 36 seconds, but like most of us don't have the practice of actually being perfect at the technique. It's to do a double inhale and a long exhale. And the exhale is about 7 to 8 seconds. And this is one of the fastest way to reduce cortisol quickly. It's shown to improve attention span over the next 90 minutes just by doing this little thing for about 90 seconds between meetings or between big deal events that you may have. The third one, which is better, which is also good for resetting the cortisol cycle, but also for memory consolidation. So most of our memories, when you live your day to day, most of our memory or your brain will commit to what's important and what will stay in your long-term memory happens about 6 to 8 minutes before bedtime. And at that time, if you're distracting yourself with being on the phone or not giving your brain that time, your memory is going to start not registering long term. So a little technique to do at this is to either go for a small walk, decompress and just take some breaths, do boxed breathing where it's 4 second inhale, 4 second hold, 4 second exhale, 4 second hold. And doing this just for 6 minutes is good enough. Also, maybe journaling. We also need to give our brain time to think. Now, this is a concept that people are like, well, what do you mean? I'm always thinking. Well, you're always thinking about a task at hand. But have you ever thought about just letting your brain time to think? Maybe this is one of the reasons why a lot of people wake up in the middle of the night and are like, well, now I'm just awake. It doesn't always have to be sleep apnea. It's just your brain wants to think. It wants to tie up some loose ends. It found ways to answer the questions that you were stuck on in the daytime. And it does it in that like confluence mode. And if we don't give it that time, then it's going to take it out of your sleep. So those are some of those micro recovery techniques to like get out of the high output state to just introduce the calm. So the next day when you hit it again, you do feel that motivation. Again, motivation is about dopamine in a setting where you're not uncontrolled cortisol elevated. Another one technique to reset the dopamine cycle all the way deep. And usually I recommend this for my patients at about 4-month cadence, 3 to 4 month cadence, is delay caffeine for 60 minutes in the morning, no social media for one full day, and then something called zone 2 exercise for 25 minutes. So this is pretty much a 24 to 48-hour protocol done at a 3-month interval. And it literally resets your dopamine cycle where social media that has so much influence over us or the cortisol cycle, this dopamine reset can also help with that part. So this was my little bit of information and a little micro technique we could use to start getting motivation back in our life. It's more about activating what God has given us than to try to look outside of our body. We just have lost these skills.
I love that. I think a lot of us get trapped in that. And, just obviously you and I have talked personally
Mhm.
about that being in that high cortisol state. I think that's when I found you was
Yeah.
in that state postpartum.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. So all wonderful techniques.
Yeah.
You touched on this a little bit. Can we maybe dive into a little bit of sleep? I
Absolutely.
talk to a lot of people, and obviously I've struggled with it too, that
Yeah.
waking up or 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and your mind's racing, and you did touch on that. But can we maybe go a little
Yeah.
deeper dive? Because sleep is just so critical,
Yeah.
obviously, for all of us. And I think a lot of us just kind of live in this chronic state of
Yeah. Sleep
exhaustion.
deprivation
So
or something.
sleep deprivation. Yeah,
So
exactly.
the power of sleep. So there's 3 big things that you can do to help prevent chronic disease or even neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's. It's exercise, the type of food you eat, and then sleep. Sleep is very underrated and it's more of a learned behavior. So it's actually more like a habit than an action you do. You can't just go to bed and say, okay, go to sleep. It just doesn't work. So sleep, you have to create a routine to help you fall asleep. So this includes the temperature of the house or the room needs to be around 67 to 69 degrees. Now, I know some people will be mad at me. Well, my wife says that's too cold. She's going to poke me. It's supposed to be 80 degrees. Well, the body feels better when it's sleeping at a lower temperature. Also, sleeping at the same time every night even on the weekends. I know that we like to fluctuate. We're like, well, this is the weekend. We'll stay up till 1. But just that disrupts the circadian rhythm so much that it could take up to 48 hours to recover the cortisol bump and the dopamine motivation. So sleeping at the same time is one of the most powerful things you could do. And then this one is kind of going to be a little tricky where I'm going to say alcohol limitation or reducing alcohol as a habit. So alcohol is one of the most influential things on your sleep. It reduces HRV. It doesn't allow your body to enter rest state. It robs you of deep sleep, and it also damages your brain in itself while doing so. So to help improve your sleep cycle, one of the best things you could do is drink at least 4 hours before you go to bed, maybe 3. If you're going to have any drinks, have drinks as an episodic event, not more like a habitual nightly ritual. And if you're going to limit it to 1 to 2 drinks. The liver could process alcohol at the rate of 1 ounce per hour, or 6 ounces of wine per hour, or 12 ounces of beer per hour. It doesn't matter if you have super liver. If you have 4 drinks, it's going to take 4 hours to the body to metabolize that alcohol. That means you're not really sleeping. You're stuck in this crap sleep or N2 sleep, which doesn't do anything for you. Deep sleep will clean your brain out of these amyloid plaques that will gradually build up for all of us. So it cleans the brain of toxins. And then it also allows for memory consolidation when your brain wakes up and goes into REM sleep. Both of those parts of sleep are very important. Deep sleep, REM sleep. And then in the middle is this like N2 or core sleep. A lot of us now have these wearables, so you'll be able to see like graphically what I'm kind of talking about. But that's another helpful point is that because of these health tech and health wearables, absolutely use it. Our practice is trying to incorporate that into our medical practice because it's so crucial. Sleep is crucial for recovery, and anything we could do, even small micro habits, can help. So just creating a wind down routine before you get into bed. So as I said, when you brush your teeth, go back, you got 10 minutes. This is the memory consolidation time. Give your brain either time to think if it's hyperactive at that time, or if it is too stressed out during the day because of all the stuff that happened, wind it down with the box breathing, as I said. And then finally, just setting the right time every night and then the temperature. And this should help starting to help your body learn the habit of sleeping. Initially, it may not work for a little bit and then it can. Now, the asterisk here is obviously there's a few things that some people may have, like sleep apnea, that can limit your ability to sleep. And that one you might need to be medically evaluated to see why are you not getting deep sleep or restful sleep. And the health tech would be able to help us narrow that down as well, or at least be a good screening test to let your physicians or your healthcare providers know that something needs to be done here.
Can it be helpful to use prescribed medications to kind of help break the cycle, or is it best to do it naturally, or does it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that medicines are here to help, right? There's all these like pop media and like black box warnings on them. Oh, don't take these cause Alzheimer's and stuff. You're more likely to get Alzheimer's if you just don't sleep. So it does not matter if you take medications, especially episodically, whether it's Ambien, whether it's Trazodone, whether it's over-the-counter Benadryl or doxylamine. As long as you're able to sleep and your sleep cycle, especially on your trackable, is giving you good stages, that's actually the most precise way of making sure you're getting good sleep. So yes,
Fantastic.
do not discourage. I mean, I do not discourage the use of medications, especially when you need it.
Hmm.
It's a
Perfect.
tool, you know?
Absolutely. Let's maybe jump into diet
Yes.
and maybe glucose, some things
Yes.
that you and I have had conversations about. As all of real estate brokers, like being really in the profession of sales. I'm in the profession of sales. We have bad habits of getting up. We start our day with coffee. We end our day with that glass of wine, and we forget to eat breakfast. And then we're starving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we, hit a drive-through. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that affects our brain and our performance.
You got it. So when you wake up and you just had coffee all on an empty stomach, what you did was you just took that cortisol and took it to the next level. Food helps bring that down. Now, I know a lot of people will be like, well, there's a lot of research about intermittent fasting. Fasting forward living is helpful for people who have prediabetes or have obesity or some kind of metabolic dysfunction. But most of us are going to need to fuel our brain. That's like driving a car without putting gas in it. Like you're going to get so far before it blows up on you. So same thing happens with our focus, motivation, and emotional ability. If you just go in with no food, no nutrition, eventually your brain just doesn't give you the output that it can. That's why some days you would be much more effective, and other days you're like, what's happening? Like I feel like I'm in a fog, or too much is happening and my brain is not able to grasp it. Where yesterday I could open 10 windows in my brain. Now I'm only doing 3. So one thing I'll say is that One rule that I like to live by, and I try to instill this upon my patients too, is 20 to 30 grams of protein within 3 hours of waking up. It doesn't matter if it's a protein shake. So, Jill, your example, okay, you had your coffee, just have one protein shake out the door. It will do something magical for your brain where at least it keeps your brain having the fuel it needs. It will not make you hungry compared to having carbohydrates for breakfast. Whenever you have any kind of carbohydrate for breakfast, you'll be stuck in this perpetual cycle of glucose rise, insulin rise, glucose drop, hunger. Okay, insulin drop, and I got to eat again. So then you're just going to be chasing energy the whole day. And when you consume energy, your body spends energy trying to digest this food. So then it goes away from the brain. And again, now a lot of us will notice this too after lunch we're pretty much functioning on like 40, 50%. Even if you want to, you just can't. Partly is because that cortisol and just us spending all that energy digesting food instead of keeping it in our brain. So protein forward eating, meaning protein in the morning before you leave, 30 grams out the door. That's one way. And then a couple snacks on the go, right? So a quick snack on the go would be having Greek yogurt, some protein powders and berries. Another would be protein shake, chia seeds in it. Another one would be hard-boiled eggs, avocado, an apple. These are all like things that you don't have to cook. You just grab, put them in the bag. And how I would put it is, I call it a 3-2-1. Three components of this meal is a protein, a fruit or vegetable, and then a healthy fat. The two is the electrolytes and fiber. And then one is the non-negotiable 30 grams of protein in the morning before you leave. So those were a few ideas, but like also Chipotle and Qdoba make a bowl that's protein heavy, double protein, light rice, heavy veggies. That's that's a healthy meal. Even though we could say, well, they have these many chemicals. The chemical list is long, but the macronutrients of it is what your brain sees. So we can't be perfect right off the bat. There's not going to be one perfect solution, especially when you're living in a high performance field. But it doesn't mean that you just can't do micro habits set in there. So like one little thing, cheese stick, Greek yogurt cup, berries. Could buy that by bulk and just put it in a bag and it's good to go and it will be on the road all day long. If you're out stuck about, Mad Greens makes some pretty healthy salads. So does Qdoba and so does Chipotle. So just making these a habitual change can actually snowball into this is just how you are. This is how you eat. And you would also notice like a change in your output. You'll notice a change in your energy during the course of the day. It won't do that huge fluctuation where you're like good until 11 and then no good after that. You will be able to have energy all the way until about 3 to 4 p.m.
I love one of the things that you've talked about in our conversations is taking these tips and just setting a maybe a 2 week goal. Just try to do
Yeah,
it every day for 2 weeks because
correct.
I know like a lot of you, I know for me when I think like, oh gosh, I have to break all these habits
Yeah.
and completely change my lifestyle. Um, you know, just committing to a week or two of, okay, I'm going to wake up every day. I'm going to have an Oikos 20
Yeah.
grams of protein yogurt. I'm just going to make that a habit.
Yeah.
That can sometimes
Yeah.
make it a little, little easier. And then once you start feeling better, then that motivation comes
Just
in and
stays.
like, oh
And then it
gosh,
also stays. So the habit part also is like, you said you drink coffee in the morning. Well, you can make a habit by anchoring onto another habit. So, okay, when you're drinking your coffee, you're like, okay, I'll just make my protein shake or my yogurt right now, and I'll put my lunch together. Because this is your brain already has the time cue set that, oh, I need coffee right now. Perfect. So just add to it. Habit stacking after about 2 to 3 weeks will become a new thing. And how the habit stays in life is that if the brain sees it as good, or you tell the brain that this is good. So that works too. You tell the brain that this was good, or the brain is like, wow, I feel better. It will just stay. Then what will happen is when you don't do it, that's when your body's going to say, oh, I got to get back to doing it because I felt better.
absolutely. I'm going to pop back here. There were a couple questions that came in. So Nicole Gregory is asking, how many grams of protein do you need daily?
Question. This is dependent on each individual person, their level of muscle mass, and their level of activity and what they're trying to achieve. So, like one way that we calculate this for people is we do an in-body composition scan that tells us how much muscle that person has. Then we use an equation to help calculate this number. Most women minimally should have about 80 grams of protein per day, and this would be a 5'2", 135-pound woman. Other people, say 70-year-old female with history of osteoporosis. Now she's going to need a lot more protein. She's going to need about 140 grams of protein per day. So minimum protein should be 90 across the board. Men probably 20% more. And this is just general advice. We do calculate it on a individual basis, but generally for healthy people, it should be at least 90 to 100 grams a day. Protein also makes you satiated. It curbs the glucose spikes. It's really good for us. And if you're not building muscle with protein, what ends up happening is the body just converts it to glucose anyways, but it converts it so slowly that it doesn't do this huge spike in blood glucose levels. So short answer, 90 to 100 grams a day minimum. Long answer depends on your training and what you want to achieve. If you're out there trying to be a CrossFit athlete, some of them will be on 175 to 200 grams a day. But most of our practice, most of the people we take care of are anywhere from 90 to 140 grams.
Okay, Michael's asking back on the sleep question. He sets his thermostat to 62 degrees at night. Is that too cold?
If they're too cold is not a bad thing per se, as long as your like sinuses are not clogging over, because then it would be an impedance of breathing, because breathing is important when you're sleeping. But no, as long as you're sleeping, and even if you collect any kind of health wearable or sleep data and you're getting the cycles pretty decent, about 60 to 90 minutes of deep sleep and about 90 minutes of REM sleep, and the N2 sleep doesn't matter, it will be okay. But too hot is a thing because your body temperature likes to drop at night. So it could wake you up if it's too hot outside.
Okay. I'm thinking let's maybe dive now into one of my favorite topics to discuss with you, and that's gut health. It's just a really fascinating topic. Talk to us about the importance of gut health. How do we create a healthy gut? What is leaky gut?
Yeah.
Um, the immune system originating in the
Yeah.
gut.
So
Tell us all about all the
over,
things.
over the last 3 years or so, the gut science has gone through the roof with research. So prior to that, like you would have bloating and irregularity, and you will go to the GI doctor and they'd be like, okay, we're gonna do a colonoscopy. They do a colonoscopy, everything looks good. You don't have any polyps, no cancer, you're not gonna die. Come back next year, done. And you're like, well, this really didn't help me. How do I get better? Right? And that's where a whole realm of scientists were like, well, there's something more going on about it. Well, the gut-brain axis means that there's this whole nervous system in your gut that helps with endocrine function, immunologic function, and stress and cortisol function, or neurotransmitter function, I would put it. Serotonin is made in the gut at 80%. Dopamine is made in the gut at 50%. So this is very important because these neurotransmitters are made and are able to communicate with our brain like that. So when we talk about the gut, it turns out to be in the skin of the gut where the food is absorbed. There's much more information that happens there. Nutrients are getting across, but how nutrients get across are solely dependent on the type of gut microbiome or the bacteria you have in your gut. They did tons of research on this, and they were able to isolate a few gut colonies that they saw in people that lived to 180 really well. And then they looked at the opposite people. They looked at people in their 50s who had heart attacks and strokes, and they were like, what is there any correlation? And it turns out that the people in the 50s that had unhealthy metabolic syndromes were missing certain gut microcolonies. Their gut microbiome was less diverse. And the people that were living in rural Italy, Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, Japan, that lived forever, they were eating, they had much more of a diverse gut microbiome. So this one's going to be a little bit of a hard sell to tell people how to improve this. But the way to improve this is to add 30 different plant foods per week. So I'm not saying this every day. It's over the course of a week. But if you want to naturally do it, this is one way of doing it. There are some gut colonies that are just amazing. A few companies make a great product with it. One of them is called Pendulum Probiotics with Acromantia. And they were able to use science to prove that, look, these are the colonies that are in the centenarians, and they're absent in the people that get heart attacks. Then they're in the realm of trying to figure out that, well, okay, if patients have these colonies, do they get less dysbiosis, meaning mutation of the cells that are happening in the gut flora, and can it lead to reduced colon cancer? Because now we're getting younger and younger patients coming in with colon cancer. I think my youngest was 38, which like 10 years ago, the youngest person I saw was 47. So this processed foods, loss of gut microbiome diversity, and dysbiosis because of too much antibiotics and consuming processed foods and not raw foods is causing this. So a few ways of helping the gut was one, that 30 different plant foods per week. Even if you could do a little bit around 20, think of it this way. When you're in the produce department, look at colors. The more different colors, you're on the right track. If they all look green, then that's not the same thing either. So you want to try to like get some color diversity in there. Fermented foods, that's a pretty good one to add. So fermented foods in the realm of kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut. Either one of these once per day is fantastic. So I personally like kefir drinks. It's like a yogurt drink. It's like a thick smoothie. Flavor doesn't matter. But this would add, it's cooling to the system. It's protein in there too. And it would help with gut microbiome diversity. And then one other way of helping the spike of glucose, right? So say after dinner, which is most of our biggest meals, your microbiome is going to process all that carbohydrate and cause this spike of glucose and insulin. Just going for a 10-minute walk after, maybe 15-minute walk after dinner helps with that. It helps with gut microbiome, helps with bloating, helps with the glucose elevation and the metabolic dysfunction that happens. But yeah, that's some of them. Obviously, alcohol also is the devil in there, but I don't want to keep making this a moral argument, but alcohol is really not great for a lot of our systems, and the gut microbiome is also one of them.
Remember one of the things you and I talked about too, were with regards to the gut microbiome or the ties to like MS also,
Correct.
right?
So, yeah, so in 2023, there was a very interesting paper proposition that went down. Some of these autoimmune conditions, literally, the doctors for decades have said, well, I don't know why it happens. Your body's attacking itself. Well, the question becomes a body which is self-preserving, why would it attack itself? What would cause it to do that? So, one theory, and they published this pretty well, was for patients with lupus. They were able to prove that lupus can actually be a byproduct of a leaky gut. So to put it, if these are two cells of your gut wall and they come in contact like this, if you don't have enough fiber, the mucus layer from the top of the cells goes away, and the gut microbiome, some of the dangerous colonies could squeeze in, not in the cell, but between the cell. Because the cell does have a wall, but it's like alleyways at the beach house, like there's always an alleyway between two beach houses. So it's like that. It goes in there, it gets stuck in the lymphatic system. And then what the body does is, oh, what's going on here? This is a foreign invader. Let me make some antibodies to it, and these antibodies cross-react with parts of our own tissue, thus the autoimmune condition pathophysiology. So there's a lot of work going on about this connecting to autoimmune conditions like lupus and MS.
So, is there a genetic component to that as well, that people are maybe genetically predisposed to having that leaky gut that leads to autoimmune?
So that's pretty interesting, right? Because up until now, you would talk to your doctor and they'd be like, well, your mom has it, grandma had it, you had it. Well, over the last 2 years, the conundrum might have changed because is it that your mom, grandmom, and you have been eating the same foods or living in the same environment the same way? And is this truly an environmental process that happened more so than familial? Don't get me wrong, there is definitely familial risk that happens with people. But it's kind of exciting to see that science is going more towards epigenetics and trying to figure out environment because we do have more tools and research to be able to test that. We didn't have that when we just had the plain old microscope. It wasn't up until Steve Horvath in 2015 who was able to learn and teach us about epigenetics. So not just DNA, but what actually gets transcribed, what instructions actually become real. Because we have a book of like 10,000 instructions and we only use maybe 200, 300. So what instructions get transcribed is important. And cortisol and stress and sleep all play, and food all play a big role into it. But yeah, it is a very interesting part of science now that we're in. And I bet there's more to come, especially with the gut microbiome. Within the next 5 to 10 years, I think we'll see huge improvements in colon cancer risk reduction and potentially even this inflammaging, meaning just gut dysbiosis causing cellular disruption and dysfunction. And it's going to be interesting to see. There are already few papers in 2022 and 23 regarding some of the reasons of why we age, and gut dysbiosis is one of the 12 factors of why we age, which is kind of important.
Is that something you could touch on a little bit? We've talked about that, aging and the research there and how we can
Correct. So,
slow. I
so
think we all want to
I,
know how to slow that aging process.
I know. So part of being a longevity practice, right? Um, there's a few things about aging that for a long time, science never saw aging as a problem. So they didn't want to solve it. We just saw hypertension as a problem. Heart failure is a problem, diabetes is a problem, overweight is a problem, joint issues is a problem. So then in the last, I think it wasn't until 2020 that they even started to think about this. While everyone was busy with COVID and stuff, there's a bunch of scientific work going on. And in 2023, they published two papers about aging. One of them was they actually quantified aging as a physiological process, and there's 12 stages to it, 12 factors that go into it. And some of this I might just share with Jill too, where I'll just give you these papers too if you want to distribute them to
Awesome. Thank you.
your listeners. But yeah, they were able to actually map out 12 things that happen and which ones matter. And once they start dysfunctioning, then the aging process speeds up. So how you would think about this in practical life is, okay, say you're 65 and your friends, you look around and some of them are dropping. And you're like, what's the difference? Well, I see a 90-year-old skiing and most 90-year-olds in a facility. What did that guy do different? And that's what science is trying to answer is they're not trying to make people live to 150. I mean, sure, like the Brian Johnson guy for a couple $1 million a year, he's trying to live forever. But most of the people in the longevity space have come up with the true definition of aging, which is health span. We want to stay healthy all the way up until we need to go. We all know we're going to pass, but we should stay healthy in that marginal decade, is what Dr. Peter Attia calls it, or that last decade when chronic pain and life just loses its luster, you know? So these 12 hallmarks of aging manipulating them, trying to slow down some of them that affect each individual person differently can actually help change how the trajectory of your health span is. So interesting stuff in aging. It isn't all just about taking peptides and just taking rapamycin. Sometimes you get sold on that stuff too. There's a bunch of anti-aging institutes, but all they're doing is trying to sell you a bunch of products. There's a few products that help, but mostly it's sleep, exercise, diet, and how you could put that in micro habits. And that's one, but the biggest thing is getting out of chronic stress. Chronic stress, even more than alcohol, is the number one killer of man. Chronic stress.
Ugh. Does that stress anybody out? Stress is what's going to get us.
It literally is stress that gets us. That's
Right?
literally it.
So don't stress.
Yeah. Or not, don't stress, it's stress during the 9 to 5, but relax from 5 to 9,
Okay,
right?
that's good. I think we can all try to aim for that, right?
There we go. And don't use alcohol as a way of de-stressing. There's so many other ways of doing it. One way to like getting rid of alcohol as a habit is okay, you know you're going to come home. It does work. It opens up GABA channels in your body and makes you relax. Another way to do it is to go for a walk. Another way to do it is taking ashwagandha 500 milligrams at night. Another way to do it is to just take some tonic water. It also helps. So yeah, there's a magnesium glycinate 200 to 300 milligrams at night. 80% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is needed to go from excitatory neurotransmitter called glutamate to convert it into calming molecule called GABA. And magnesium and B6 are two cofactors that we need to make this conversion happen. So just taking magnesium at night, for most of us being deficient, can help us be calm. So
That's
just learning
incredible.
some of these small deal things that most doctors don't. I mean, I wasn't taught it either. Most doctors aren't taught this because they're taught to be fixers of problems. But then we took a different step where like we want to prevent problems and let humans achieve their peak potential, whether it's cognitive specialty or physical specialty, you know?
Hmm. Yep. I want to ask you quickly about one last topic that I didn't uh, give to you ahead of time. And then I want to dive into some Q&A. And if you guys have questions for Dr. Patel, please put that in the Q&A section. But talk to us a little bit about gluten. That's kind of become a big thing, gluten sensitivity. Some people are true celiac, but it seems like that it's just kind of a big topic. More and more
Uh,
people I think a conversation around that and then how that also ties to the gut would be probably interesting to a lot of our viewers.
so gluten is something that happens more so in North America than in Europe. This is going to be hard to hear, but because we process our grains differently here, we process them to conserve grain, where we don't we care more about after the famines that happened in the 50s and our soldiers were the skinniest ever, and that was one of the biggest reasons why in World War II, like weren't able to enroll so many people. We cared about food scarcity a lot, so we started putting preservatives in our food and now we have surplus. Well, the food and the grain processing never changed in this country, where in the other countries like Europe, Canada, they don't process grain the same. So the gluten in those countries, you could eat bread in Italy, you could eat it in certain parts of Canada, you could eat pizza there, and it won't react to you the same way it does here. And it has to deal with the way that grain is processed. Some of us will have certain type of gut microbiome that does not like gluten. It will give you bloating, it will give you reactivity. And then the neat part about gluten and how we diagnose celiac disease is actually testing antibodies to gluten. So again, goes down to the the gut barrier, where if you don't have a bunch of mucus over it. Now let's talk about mucus a little bit. So if these are cells on the gut wall, and this is the lumen or where the food passes. We need like a layer of mucus here. It protects it against things going inside or between the cells, as I discussed. But this mucus is fueled by fiber. So if you don't give the gut microbiome fiber to digest, because the food gets processed, right? Processed food is reduced fiber. That's all it means. Anytime you cook food, it reduces the fiber content, even healthy food. Cooking of food is processing of food. So when you do that and don't eat raw vegetables and food, what ends up happening is your diet is deficient in fiber. They did research and proved that if you have 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day, which is quite a bit, it could add 3 years to your life. 3 years, that's wild, just by eating fiber. And as long as you give your gut microbiome fiber, they'll eat the fiber as food and not eat the mucus lining. Now, once you start damaging the mucus lining, now all the food that you eat and the byproduct that the gut bacteria will make is going to make you start getting sensitivities. And eventually, you'll see that when you get diagnosed with these gluten sensitivities, there's these antibodies that are positive. People start getting rashes. Skin is very sensitive to having gluten sensitivity. So very important question, but the sad part of it is it turns out to be the way we process grain and how we don't eat enough fiber. The more, the better. And then the gut microbiome is a little bit more precise. So it has to be based on, and now we have tests for it where you could test your gut microbiome, see what colonies you're lacking, and they would even make you those colonies and you ingest them. And it could really help people who have gut gluten sensitivities. It could help people who have dysbiosis or bloating and irregularity as well. Fiber is also very low-hanging fruit that everyone should have almost every day. One quick way of doing it is either Metamucil or Benefiber at nighttime before you go to bed. It takes about 8 hours of transit time, and then in the morning you would have your bowel movements. And just to put it into perspective, even that as a fiber supplement is only about 6 to 8 grams of fiber. And we're supposed to hit 25 to 30 per day.
Gosh,
So we got to really think about fiber in every meal and how we could obtain it.
I would guess 100% of us probably are hitting that every day.
You and me have talked about this, Jill, but this is something I talk about with almost every patient in our clinic is like low-hanging fruit, get some fiber in your body,
Mhm.
you know?
Along that same lines, and I'm going to jump into some Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll kind of rapid fire. So can you repeat and spell the name of the probiotic that you had mentioned? I
Sure.
will type
It's
this in.
Pendulum, Pendullum. Probiotics is the company. And the one I like is Metabolic Daily Pro because it's the right amount of Akkermansia or the gut microbiome, not the glucose plus one. That's too much, I feel. I even saw patients reduce their A1C when they didn't need to. They reduced it by a whole point, which is very potent, but like not everyone should be on that level of probiotic. And the lower one is not enough. So it's that middle of the pack, Metabolic Daily Pro. And then it's neat to see some of their infographics on their website about short chain fatty acids and how they work. And you'll also see that they do promote GLP, natural Ozempic production from your gut.
Here's a question. What are your thoughts on collagen supplements as we age?
It depends on which type of collagen supplement, because some collagen supplements get denatured by the acidic environment of your stomach. Some collagen supplements get absorbed no problem, but they may have too much fat content. So I saw a patient the other day with normal cholesterol levels a year prior. She started doing some kind of bovine colostrum with some kind of liver supplement too. And I, as a doctor for 10 years, I haven't seen a cholesterol profile like that where her LDL, bad cholesterol, was 400. It
Gosh.
was wild. And even with familial high cholesterol problems, I haven't seen that. So sometimes you have to be mindful of that. Colostrum supplements do help the um, gut feel better because they do have the right proteins in them. So it does help soothe some of the gut. Some of them can also help with inflammation of the joints and things, but The colostrum has to be higher quality. And don't ask me which one because I don't know that much on colostrum branding.
Any tips for nicotine reduction?
Oh yeah. It depends, right? The I don't want to sound like this, but back in my day, we used to just smoke cigarettes, which I did too. I know, I quit many years ago. But the one way of quitting nicotine, right? There has to be some kind of negative connotation on the brain. The why needs to be there. So like for me, the why was my wife now was like, you smell, and I could smell you forever. So it's like, okay, it's me or the cigarettes. So the why makes sense. But then when it becomes vaping, it becomes very challenging because that smell is not there, that negative connotation is not there. So you literally have to just do it from inside. Now, how can you quit nicotine? There's medications that help with nicotine quitting. This is Chantix or something called Wellbutrin. Now, Wellbutrin, very specific medicine. It's only one of the only medicines that adds dopamine to you. Now, don't think that you're just taking Wellbutrin and feeling happy. It is also used for that. But the dopamine, again, being a habitual chemical. So what it ends up doing is when you stop smoking, your body's going to want to miss this habit. So adding that dopamine back in, saying, well, it's still okay, it's still okay, helps with reducing nicotine um, consumption. The other part about nicotine is that we do have nicotine receptors throughout our bodies, right? And it helps us calm down. It does increase alertness for about 90 minutes after you smoke a cigarette, which is maybe I should not be promoting this, but but the truth of it is that you also would need a different way to relieve stress if you don't want to go back to it. So like again, trying some of that physiologic side, you do have to supplement what the nicotine was doing to be successful at reducing nicotine. So yeah, that's one way. Back when we would smoke, it would be easy, right? There's a quantity of cigarettes. But with vaping, it's been impossible to bring it down because it's like, well, how do you gauge it? You smoke 20 puffs or 8 puffs, like no one knows. Where it's like before, I would just tell people, it's like, okay, if you're at 10 cigarettes a day, do a working pack and a at-home pack. And then in the week, you just put 9 cigarettes in the working pack for 1 week. And then the next week, you're going to do 8 cigarettes in the pack. And then you just keep doing that up until you get down to 1 to 2. And then it's the hard part. You just got to rip the band-aid off, don't do anything. And you got about 3 weeks of being really mad and crummy and emotionally labile. And then it gets better.
All uphill after that, right?
Yeah. It's just rewiring how we introduce calm to the body, right? So same thing with alcohol and smoking. I did it personally too because of the calm. And then I just learned different ways to get calm. And because of that, now I don't drink or smoke. And it just works like that. If you don't substitute it, then living in a chronic high stress environment, you just won't succeed, which is hard, you know? And then unfortunately, if you try that cycle and you don't succeed, your brain will take that as a hit and will say, well, I can never do it. And then you're stuck in the perpetualness of needing it forever.
This question came up. I thought it might, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. Can you give us a quick overview on how you feel about GLP-1s?
Ooh, good question. It's going to be a long overview because I think they are fantastic for people who need them done right. So one thing about GLPs are this molecule has been around for many years, about 7 years. It wasn't until, and it used to be available as pills. When you took it as pills, it increased GLP for a couple hours, and that was enough to reduce blood sugar this much. Even the pendulum probiotics I told you about says increases GLP for minutes, not hours, not days. It's when the pharmaceutical industry made it last for about 5 days, which is the shots, is when we started noticing amazing benefits. So for what kind of benefits? 18 to 25% cardiac risk reduction, independent of statins, which is hasn't been done in the last 20 years. No new medicine has done that. Alzheimer's risk reduction. This is wild. About 33 to 70% Alzheimer's risk reduction. So one of the things at our clinic, anytime someone comes in, early dementia, they go on a GLP, not with the intention of weight loss, but with the intention of metabolic fixing of their brain. GLP will help the brain extract glucose without insulin being high. Hyperinsulin is also a bad thing for the brain in itself. So GLP, the way actually it should be used, and the compounding of GLP became a really big boon because now we got to use it and learn about it. When you had the pharmaceutical company give it in specific dose, it could only achieve certain endpoints. And you could only do so much with it. There were too many side effects. But when you started doing compound, what we saw as a clinic, and we're a longevity clinic, so we also do VO2 maxes, and we saw massive improvements in people's metabolic function, which is a VO2 max. How you're supposed to be on it is supposed to be on it the lowest amount of dose for a decent amount of time. Because the damage happens when you go too hard, too fast, is where you start getting muscle loss, bone loss, and fat loss. But when you do it like this, all it does, it's almost like a long-term body recomposition training. It keeps working at getting rid of fat, fixes fatty liver, which is amazing. Before this, we only had one drug 2 years ago called Resdefra, which did almost nothing. And this has been able to cure fatty liver. Now, fatty liver, almost, I think maybe a third of Americans have. It could be from alcohol use or just consuming processed carbohydrates, which is essentially all of us, right? So this is the one drug that could actually reverse it. We use it very regularly in our clinic. We do not discriminate against it just because of the massive data that we have seen on our patients. And we just do it right, where we make sure that their muscle mass loss is not above what they should be at. Usually how you would know is that most people don't have these. We have body composition scales and stuff, so it measures fat and muscle separate. And the ratio that's healthy is 1 to 4 or 1 to 3, 1 pound of muscle for 3 or 4 pounds of fat. Then you continue GLP and you could just stay at the lowest dose. When you start seeing 1 to 1 or all muscle, no fat, you actually have to give a break to the GLP. You have to stop it for a little bit of time, let the metabolism reset, and then you go back on it. GLP works for so long, and then it doesn't. And then what we found was at that time, what ends up happening is we need to add resistance training because the muscle becomes inactive. GLP essentially is doing metabolic slowing. It's slowing your heart rate down, and it works for certain things, but it doesn't work for everything. And that's why we see mixed results when people use GLP. But when you use GLP with tailored approach, everyone could achieve a result. And that's what we've seen at our practice.
That's great. Okay, so do we have time for one more question? We're right at 3 o'clock. Are you okay?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay. Nicole is asking, what causes lactose intolerance?
Everyone is lactose intolerant to a degree. It just depends on the amount of enzyme you have in your GI tract. So I love milk. I could drink about 8 to 12 ounces of it. And then if I drank half a gallon, I will be lactose intolerant. Some people have little, 4 ounces of milk and they have it. It comes down to certain enzymes in your gut, lactobacillus, in your microbiome. And for lactose resistance, I mean, in intolerance, there is some enzymes, digestive enzymes you could try to see if it helps. But other times they're just going to say, okay, reduce it. It could also come down to the milk protein that could be irritant to your GI tract. So I am pro gut microbiome. So for me, instead of just saying go to Lactaid and drink lactose-free milk, or I would say more likely try to fix the problem, think outside the box, and try to fix it instead of just like the traditional science or realm saying, well, just avoid it. Because if you fix it, then you could enjoy certain types of cheeses and milk too, and protein shakes. Um, Most of the yogurts don't have that much lactose in it anyways, but cheeses at least some.
Going back to the gluten subject, is the glyphosate a part of that issue? Can organic grain help with the issue?
Yes. So glyphosate, we're talking about pesticide here. Can it be? It could look the exact same, so you wouldn't know, right? In terms of gluten sensitivity or not, the symptoms would be the same, bloating and loose stool. So technically, could glyphosate do it? Sure. But glyphosate wouldn't add the antibody against gluten turn positive. It would be more of phenotype, meaning the syndrome that shows up. And yeah, that could be a potential, but it's so hard in this in North America to eat something without glyphosate. I mean, I know there's organic, but I mean, even that would be literally like farm to table eating, which is nearly impossible for most of us living in the urban jungle. Um,
Okay, I think we'll snag one last question. I want to be respectful of your time. Are stool softeners and Miralax harmful to our gut wellness?
Stool softeners are something different. So like Dacasate and stuff, less likely they would mess with your gut microbiome. Miralax is interesting. So Miralax, what it does is it blocks so our colon's job is to absorb liquid. That's all it does. Small bowel will absorb all the nutrients. Colon's job is to have this liquid slurry turn into solid poop. And it's all it does is absorb fluid. So Miralax just blocks the channels and forces fluid into the colon. So it works the opposite. And in that sense, would it affect the gut microbiome like that? Less likely, because not a lot of absorption's happening there. And whenever we talk about gut-brain axis, we're talking about small bowel. That's where all the nutrients are getting absorbed. So Miralax wouldn't be there, and stool softener wouldn't be there either. So yeah, good question.
Okay, last question. Are you taking patients, and how does one become a patient of yours?
Yes, we are taking patients. And I think what I'll do is I did have a tip sheet that I created because I care about this stuff a lot and I want to help people reset their cortisol cycle naturally before people start throwing meds at you. So I'm going to send over a sheet to Jill and you could send it out and our contact information is out there. Um,
Tell us about concierge medicine and why you chose to do that
oh,
and
fair.
about your
Um,
practice.
So concierge medicine became a vessel. So I used to work for two, three corporations as a primary care doctor, internal medicine for 8 years. And then what I saw was I couldn't even take care of my patients. And the patients I took care of, I used only one type of science. And that science was only enough to maintain people's health at best. I maintained people's blood pressures, cholesterol, sugars. But the problem was when they got to 80, their life just went off of a cliff. Their happiness went off of a cliff. They started going to the doctor all the time and they weren't living anymore. And at that time, there were other people, scientists and influencers, health influencers, coming up with different information. So, being an analytical person, me and my brother also, we thought about it and we're like, well, we should be able to not just treat disease or manage disease. What if we're able to prevent disease? And something else changed there. So our practice, I mean, many concierge medicine practices are essentially a nice doctor that you can have a relationship with when you need them, and they'll reach out to you and they'll help you solve problems. Our practice is a little bit different where we do that. But then when you don't have problems, we still bring people in on a quarterly cadence and we're like, okay, well, life is good, but what about making it better? Right? And I have a little sheet on what I'm talking about. So when we do some of our advanced testing and metabolic testing, we get data on this kind of stuff. I don't know if you could see it, but like we put your metabolic age on there and try to figure it out because some of these metabolic testing and VO2 max testing, when it's off year over year, it could actually predict future outcome. This is the only test scientifically validated for over 40 years that has been proven to be attached to health span. The higher, the better. And that's why we like that. We like doing this year over year while solving problems that we did not want to make this a separate thing for people. We did not want to make it a different tier because we think it needs to be brought to the public. It does not need to be saved to the athletes or just people like Brian Johnson trying to live forever. We feel that everyone should be able to benefit from this science. And if we do it right, we could actually prevent disease. It would be like a compass of health, meaning that instead of just living life and then now you have a health problem, what if you could have a way of preventing health problems, just like a financial advisor, right? When you retire, you're like, well, okay, I want to retire with $3-4 million. Well, okay, well, if you want to retire like that, you need to make this micro habit of putting money in your 401k. And then over a period of time, it's going to reach that. Same thing with health. You could plan for it. I ask people, I'm like, okay, 90, what do you want to do? Do you want to ski? Great. That means you should be able to keep your body upright, stand up from a seated position. That means natural degradation is about 10% strength loss every decade. So that means at 60, you should be able to put some squats with some weights on, 50, 30, 40 pounds to be able to do that. So at 90, you could reach what you're trying to reach. And just to think of health differently in a true preventative approach while also solving medical problems.
The other thing I love about you, Dr. Patel, and your practice is that you are this quarterback for your
Yes.
patient. And we've
Uh,
talked about that where for a lot of us, if you have multiple doctors, you go to your
Correct.
endocrinologist or you go to your rheumatologist or your
Yeah.
cardiologist, and everybody's looking at a little
Yeah.
slice of your health, and no one is really responsible for the overall picture. And that's
Yeah.
something that you do as well. So it's
And
fabulous.
yeah,
I love
that part
that.
about the quarterbacking part, true. And what I saw when I was working corporate medicine was I wanted to do this part. I love this part of quarterbacking and checking on what the specialists are doing because none of them talk to each other. So like someone needs to be the central brain. But then doing it in 15 minutes was just impossible. There's only so much data your brain could take with so many encounters in a day. So one of the things that we do is, and you've seen this, Jill, like we'll be here for an hour every time you're here. And then we'll just be like, oh, what did this person say? What's happening here? Let's put this through. Does this line up? It doesn't make sense. Like you're seeing the cardiologist saying this, the cardiologist PA said this. Now we're stuck. So somewhere in there, like you need me to help you try to guide the decision-making process. And that's where the time in concierge medicine, which should be uniform across all concierge medicine, would be having the time with a caring doctor matters for health outcome.
Well, I just adore you. Damien and I are both so thankful that we found you. You've just had a tremendous impact on my life and my health and getting me through that kind of postpartum uh,
Yeah,
cortisol and all the host of things that you've supported me with. So I just love that you are going to shape and change the path of medicine. And I am just so thankful for you and thankful for your time today.
no problem.
I know this is going to be one of, or a lot of people's favorite industry updates so far. So
Perfect. Any other questions, dear Jill?
I think we'll wrap it up there. There are some, but I want to be respectful of your time.
Got it.
So thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you so much again, Dr. Patel. You are a life-changing force. And would love for anybody out there who's looking for a doctor like you to connect with you. So I'll get you Dr. Patel's information.
Perfect, Jill.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks again.